Same is true with policing. You can't understand the Black Lives Matter movement and the importance of it if you don't know the history and the relationship between law enforcement and black and brown peoples. If you understood that history, you wouldn't ask one question about why this movement is necessary and why it's righteous. If you knew that history, but you don't know it, and it's not your fault. You weren't supposed to know it, and nobody taught it to you, right? So you don't have to know that modern policing traces back to slave patrols. That black folks' first experience with law enforcement was having, you know who? Working class and poor white folks on horseback going around keeping black folks in line on behalf of the rich master that owned all the property. That sounds a lot like modern policing, because ain't no rich people policing, right? It's working class folks who are out there protecting the property of rich people against the depredations of poor people. That's what modern policing is, and it traces back. And we know that's what modern policing is, by the way, because we will lock you up for 10 years for $100 worth of food stamp fraud. But if you take $12.5 trillion on Wall Street, 20% of the net worth of this country, you will not do 1 day in jail. So we know that law enforcement has got nothing to do with enforcing the law. It's got nothing to do with good people and bad people, lawbreakers and the law abiding. It only has to do with controlling certain people. And black and brown folks know who those certain people usually are, because it's always been them. See, black folks know that it was cops who were involved in race riots and racial terrorism against black communities for the first 50 years of the 20th century. You didn't learn about that in class either, and that's not your fault. It wasn't taught. But in fact, every single year, just about from 1900 all the way to the 1930s, 1940s at least, there were race riots where white folks would just go into black communities, burn them to the ground, bomb them from the air like in Tulsa, Oklahoma, rip people out of their homes, beat them in the street, and police sat by, watched it happen, and participated. That doesn't mean that every cop in the modern era is like that, but it means that black folks can be excused for being not so clear on the decency of police in their communities because there's a history there. It was police who dragged black folks and white allies off of those sit-in stools at lunch counters in the South to enforce segregation. See, when your job is to enforce the law, and for most of American history the law was against you as a people, then enforcing the law means you are the first line of oppression. People of color know that history and need to be excused when they don't just get over it, because that continues. It continues very easy. We know from the data on racial profiling that black folks are twice as likely as white folks to be stopped and searched for drugs, even though white folks are more likely to have drugs on us on the occasions that we're searched. White folks use drugs and sell drugs at the same or higher rate than black folks and Latinos, and yet it is black folks and Latinos who in any given year make up 85 to 90% of the people who get arrested and incarcerated for a drug offense. See, people of color know that. And if we don't understand when black folks rise up and say Black Lives Matter. Well, what do you mean, black? All lives matter. Yes, sweetheart, I know they do. Yes, they do. And that is a totally irrelevant and unnecessary point to make. You see, you don't have to say all lives matter. We take that for granted. What we've never accepted in this country is that black and brown life matter. You have to proclaim that which is ignored, you see. That's why we have Black History Month right now and not White History Month. We don't have to have White History Month because we got May and June and July and August. And every other month where we learn about white folks, we don't have to call it that. See how slick that is? That's how white supremacy operates. You don't have to call it White History Month. You just call it history, and literature, and theater, and poetry, and art. You don't have to racialize where it came from, right? That's what Malefiasante at Temple calls universalizing the particular, which is the hallmark of Eurocentric thought, right? Not everybody's experience is the same. And so when certain people have been left out of all, you have to call that out by name. Because see, we've always said all, then we didn't mean it. We said all men are created equal, and we didn't mean that shit, right? We didn't mean women, but we didn't even mean all men. We said all, and it was a lie when we said it.